I am Sarah Heiner, and I'm welcoming you back to Bottom Line Advocator. And we have a whole different treat today. I decided it was time to take a little bit of a break. You know, we've been talking so much about COVID and so much about the strains and the immune system, and we're just finishing up our great Immunity Lifeline program, which has been fabulous. And don't worry, we're going to give you another chance to participate in that in the future. So watch the Facebook to be able to the Facebook watch the feed and posts to be able to see when that's available. Anyway, but in all those old videos, don't forget you can see them either in Facebook or in our YouTube channel, Bottom Line Inc. on the YouTube channel. So go ahead and sign up for that so that you can see them, share them. We've got great information, always talking to the top experts in whatever field. So again, I've been talking to a lot of doctors, but you know what? Right now I decided there is so much beautiful return to nature going on. That's the one great thing that's happened through the pandemic, is that people are getting a little bit back to simpler times. We're doing a lot of cooking. We're seeing a lot of people outside. And in particular, people are getting back to nature, hiking, canoeing, kayaking, fishing, and it's so great. But you got to be safe. And just people think that just because you could walk, that you can hike. And there are things that you need to know to be sure that you're safe in nature. One thing I learned many, many years ago is the power of nature. You don't realize it until you are caught in a major storm. We were out on the water, and there were major storms, and you got to respect nature. It's a really powerful thing. So I've got with me today, I'm going to bring him on. I've got David Boyd from the National Forest Service. He's the Public Affairs Officer from the White River National Forest in Colorado. He's a former park ranger with the National Forest Service, and he was a biologist in Alaska, Arizona, Colorado, and Florida. So he has been all across the country, understanding nature, understanding the woods, the water, the animals, all of it. And you can learn more after this. We're going to talk about a number of different websites that you can go to and apps, but also just in general, if you want to know more about the National Forest Service, which is such a great resource, it's fs.fed.us. So welcome, Dave. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you. Yeah, good afternoon. Nice to be here.
Well, welcome east. As hopefully I've got thunderstorms going on. So hopefully, speaking of the power of nature, let me remind everybody, by the way, if you have any questions, put them into the Facebook chat. I've got my very high-tech Fred Flintstone behind me, who's sending me texts on my phone. So if I'm looking down, that's what I'm doing. He's letting me know any of your questions. So if you've got questions about activities you've got planned, problems you've run into, whatever it is, as you're planning your adventures, we can't do your vacation planning for you. But if you've got other questions, then let me know about that, okay? So post them up, and then Michael will pass them along to me. Okay, so let's get to it, all right? I think the big picture, again, I was just talking about the storms. Respecting nature. I think people don't really realize when they go out in nature, whatever it is, that one of the most dangerous things is storms, and the weather can come rolling in, especially out west, where the weather can change so very quickly. So what are things that people need to be aware of, watch out for, prepare for when they're going out?
Sure. You know, and on just about any of the topics we'll talk about today, I'll say no before you go. So that means do a little research, before you head out. And that's really true with weather. So check out the weather forecasts, know what to expect, know what kind of to expect that time of year in wherever you are. So out here in Western Colorado, as you mentioned, this time of year, afternoon thunderstorms are really common. So you have the temperatures cooling down pretty good. So if you just went hiking in a t-shirt and shorts, you might find yourself getting pretty chilly. We have lightning associated with those and the potential for flash floods. So you want to be aware of what the forecast is, and avoiding high peaks in the afternoon and things like that.
Well, and I think also people need to realize that just because the weather, as you said, check the weather service, but it changes very quickly, and they think they can outrun a storm. And in fact, a few weeks ago, we did exactly that. I was as dumb as anything. We went out on a hike. We knew that storms were supposed to come in. We got to the top of the mountain, and then the skies opened up around us. So what happens if lightning comes or if storms come, and there you are on the top of the mountain? What do people do? Because there they are stranded.
Yeah, so the first thing really is, we're talking, Rocky Mountains right now and in places like that. You can anticipate that there's going to be some buildup of clouds and lightning, from 11 o'clock noon or noon, certainly. So the earlier you can leave and be coming down before those storms start rolling in, that's the first thing. Try to just avoid it, even if the weather was forecast was for, you know, bluebird skies. Just things can change, and yeah, you can get that buildup. So try to avoid it in the first place. If you start hearing some rumbling and seeing that buildup, maybe maybe you don't summit that time. Maybe you turn around. Think about all the Everest people that have to turn around, you know, before they get to the top, and they try again another day. So just the big thing is try to avoid getting yourself in that position in the first place. If things are there, I mean, if it is starting to lightning around again, if you can get down below tree line and into the trees, that's going to be the safest place. If you're truly stuck and there's nothing else you can do, try to, you know, not be in the highest spot. Spread out if you're with people, and just crouch until and wait out the storm.
So when you're coming down, and this was the strategy that we used. And again, let me reiterate what you said. I mean, a lot of people, boaters do this as well. You know, that we used to have a sailboat, and the most dangerous thing, my husband used to say that the most dangerous thing you could have is a timeline, because again, things will change, nature will change. So if you are so committed to summiting or to finishing that hike or to getting from here to there on your sailboat, you're putting yourself at jeopardy if the weather comes in. You always have to be willing to change your plan. And on more than one occasion, we ended up tucking back in to shore when things, if you got out and the waves were far too choppy than what we wanted, or we saw a storm coming in. Coming down that mountain, we were sure. So now if you're coming down, if you can be, it's okay to be in the trees. You want to be the lowest that you can. Below, you don't want to be the
right.
highest.
You know, yeah, but you definitely out here above timberline is a really bad place to be in a lightning storm. So get down into the trees. Don't all congregate under the same tree, and then don't congregate under the largest tree either. You know, but you kind of want to spread out in case something does happen. Then others can help. Versus lightning hits the tree everyone's under, then, you know, that could be a problem. So you want to spread out and yeah, not be under the tallest tree. You know, things like caves and overhangs and all those actually aren't a safe place in a lightning storm. So you don't want to be in something like that. Just hopefully you're in the trees and you're spread out.
Okay, and that, you know, in the east also, thunderstorms do come in. Again, my day was totally clear today, and suddenly a squall came in. You know, a lightning storm came in.
Yeah.
And in the east, there's flash floods. I mean, it's not just the lightning. They have to worry about water coming up as well if they're near a river or near a stream.
Yeah, that's definitely true out here as well, and in the, you know, in the Southwest, especially. You'll be in a dry creek bed and it might be raining, you know, miles away, and you can still get in a flash flood. But we see them out here when we get these kind of torrential downpours. And you know, the thing that they'll say out here is to climb to safety. So don't try to outrun the flood or outdrive it or whatever. Just get to higher ground and wait it out.
And it all happens much faster than you realize.
Yeah, and it's pretty, you know, it's people describe, sounds like a train coming in or a jet taking off. You know, they'll just hear this incredible roar as the water is coming in. So, you know, so yeah, you want to, you know, climb, and then things like don't set up your tent in a dry creek bed, and, you know, things like that. Just, and again, kind of the know before you go. So if you're going to do a big hike through Canyonlands, you know, take a look at that national park's website and see what they're advising and the things they're cautioning people about.
All right, so let's talk about hiking. Because again, it's not, I said this earlier, like you think that it's just a walk in the woods, but it really isn't. You have to, it's not, you know, city blocks. I could walk forever in a city, but suddenly when you're hiking, you really need to know and understand what your trail is and prepare properly. So how does someone plan and know, even if I'll call it, they run 5 miles a day, how do they plan or gauge what they're able to be hiking?
Yeah, so that's kind of a big question, but I mean, the first thing is there's tons of websites that you can go and look. So if you know you're going to be coming out here and staying in Glenwood Springs, then you can come to our White River National Forest website and look at some of the different hikes and get a sense for distance and difficulty and that kind of thing. And then you can also read independent sites by just Googling and seeing what other people are saying about the hikes. So you'll kind of get a sense there of what they found.
I
But
like there's an app called All Trails that I like that
yeah,
to be able to find, and that's national actually. And there's
yep. So things like that.
there's a free version, a paid version, or you could always go to REI or one of the bookstores and get hiking books about the hikes in those areas where people will give you a background on it.
Right, and then you can, when you know where you have a sense of where you're going to go. We have people that spend most of the day answering questions about the forest and about the trails, and you can find us on Facebook and things like that, too, and just ask and make sure you have all the information. What happens sometimes is people, they just hop out of their car and they think they're just going to go a little bit down a trail, and then they get kind of interested or whatever, and they might go a little farther than they think. So just be ready to go, be prepared. Out in so many places, you're going to want to make sure you have good footwear. So often just leather boots are what the kind of the go-to out here. And then also making sure that you have water and rain gear and extra jacket and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to talk
certainly
later about packing, making sure people.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
How it always surprises me how slow I hike. So what's the rule of thumb for how long, even though, here when you're walking the streets, it might be 3 or 4 miles an hour. Rule of thumb when hiking.
Yeah, I think it really varies on the trail you're on, but in how steep it is and how rocky it is. But yeah, plan for a lot more time than 3 miles an hour.
Yeah, usually I'm gonna call it 2 miles an hour.
Yeah, if you're going at a good clip, but think about there's rocks in the trail and you're climbing and you're taking more breaks and that kind of thing. So it does take more time.
Well, and the other thing that always fascinates me, going down is work. You think that it's just work going up, but going down actually takes just as much time as going up.
Right, and as I've gotten older, I find that it's actually a lot harder to go down than up. It's not I don't get as winded, but but my knees aren't liking the going down as much, and that's where the trekking poles can really help out.
Yep.
I had a friend I used to laugh at that always had these trekking poles, and then one day he let me try them out, and I was like, okay, I'm convinced. These really help. They help going up and coming down, and just take some of the weight off the legs and provide some more support.
They
So
really do.
That's a good way to go.
Let's talk for a second. So again, just trail safety, things like letting people know where you're going, never hiking alone. Like again, so what are here's a crazy question. Give a horror story again, because people think, that's really not so bad. Give me a horror story. Like what's a horrible thing that happened that, or what happens regularly? Like who are you saving on these? What's going on?
Yeah. So and so for us, we're usually working with the local search and rescue, but it's people that have overextended. They've overestimated what they can do often, and they're often by themselves. So you don't want to, if you can help it, you don't want to hike by yourself. You want to have someone with you, and then you really want to tell someone responsible where you're going and when you expect to return, so they can start checking on you and making some phone calls if you haven't checked back in with them. But I mean, out here in Colorado, we have all kinds of things. We've had mountain bikers that have gotten way back and fallen and gotten hurt. People, on difficult hikes that have fallen, sometimes not even that difficult of a hike, and gotten hurt, and sometimes have to wait it out till someone finds them. So making sure you have people with you and that you've told people where you can go or where you're going and when you expect to be back will help with that. And then just remembering that you're out there, so you're not right in the city where if I don't know, you twist your ankle, someone can help you right there. I mean, if you're 3 miles back or farther, I mean, it's going to take a while for help to get to you. So just just be a little more careful. Just be having that in the back of your mind, like, um, you just
Right.
thinking about that and being careful.
Well,
So yeah.
and the other thing is cell service may or may not work back there. No matter where you are, you may not be able to get cell service, so you can't assume that. One thing that I tell my daughter likes to hike alone sometimes, but she always makes sure. But she always calls and tells us what trail she's on. She also makes sure that she hikes on trails that are fairly heavily trafficked if you're going to be alone, so that
Yeah,
shouldn't
that's, yeah, yeah, you can,
you don't want to
yeah,
get really off. The other thing is well, again, we'll talk about gear later, but I want to mention this now. Carrying a whistle with you, because if you get in trouble, your voice doesn't carry. And just having people can hear a whistle better than they can
right.
hear. We used to do that when we skied. If somebody fell down in the woods and you couldn't find them, that I made my girls wear whistles when they were little.
Right. Yeah, no, that's, I do with my boys as well, and I carry one. And, if you're making noise, and then that's going to help. But the kind of the rule for like I'm in trouble is 3 in a row, and then kind of take a break, and then 3 in a row kind of thing. And that's a signal that, yeah, I'm in trouble. But that does carry better than voices. And the other thing is, I guess when we start talking about horror stories, the thing you hear a lot, it happens a lot, is someone starts to get lost. But it's just human nature to think, no, I'm not lost. I'm sure it's just down this hill or that kind of thing. And when you start to get a little not sure where you are, disoriented, just stop. And and maybe that break will help you get reoriented. But if not, it's gonna if people are looking for you, it's gonna be a lot easier for them to find you if you've just stopped and you're not wandering around. Because if you're heading the opposite direction from what you think, you can get really far from your original point, and it'll take searchers just much longer to find you.
The other thing that I've heard horror stories are, we've all seen these headlines of someone, everybody's all insta focused and they all want to take that cool picture right at the edge of the ledge. Don't do that.
Right. So that maybe that's a good example of what I'm saying. Just think about what you're doing when you're out there a little, and have a little bit of common sense, and think about, gosh, if I do fall down this, how are they going to get to me? And things like that.
Well, and the thing about accidents is they're accidents. No one plans to have an accident. Everyone says,
right.
"Oh, I'll be fine." No, people really do slip down these cliffs. Edges really are softer than you realize. Rock is, can be flaky. So
right.
You really can.
Yeah, and then
right.
And then in a lot of these areas, where there's not going to be a guardrail or a sign that says don't get too close or whatever. You just have to. That's just part of the whole experience, is knowing how to be safe, and to know just, yeah, that's close enough. And,
now, how about camping? So again, people think, oh, I'll get a tent, I'll put it up, it'll be so romantic, how lovely. What are the mistakes that people are making with camping, and what do they need to be doing?
Well, make sure you have good gear. That's a big thing. So the better your gear is, the more comfortable you're going to be. Again, well, it depends on kind of how you're what type of camping you're doing. But say you're using a tent, get a tent from a outdoor retailer that is a good, solid, well-made tent. So
good zippers, waterproof. People
right,
don't,
and sturdy. So when the big thunderstorm comes in and the microburst is getting you 50-mile-an-hour winds, it doesn't trash your tent. And I have had that happen before. And again, I think
people don't realize, they want to, everything's expensive, and they don't want to spend a lot of money on good jackets and good rain gear and good footwear. And we'll talk about footwear in a bit, but your whole vacation can be ruined with bad gear. If you
right.
not warm, especially we're talking in the summer now, but you get in the winter, and if you don't have good layering, your whole day is shot. You spend $100 to go skiing, and you spend the time in the lodge because you were too cheap to be able to, to get proper layering for your clothes, and you're wearing cotton sweatshirts. It's just, a waste.
Right.
So it's good to
Right.
be
And
protected.
and another big thing we see, and this goes back to that know before you go. So do some research. What we run into out here, very popular place to visit. People will show up just thinking they'll be able to find a camping spot,
Mhm.
and show up on a Friday night thinking it's and it's full. And in some of these places, you should have a plan B and a plan C, but even then, those could be full too. So plan ahead. A lot of these sites take reservations. Otherwise, plan on getting somewhere early so you can find a spot.
Now, how about fires? You were saying that one of the big issues that you have in the Forest Service is fires, and people either lighting illegal fires or not putting the fires out properly. And that, I presume, is a lot of campers that are doing that who think, oh, isn't this romantic? We'll roast some marshmallows.
Sure, yeah, and you see that every year, but we're seeing it a lot this year for whatever reason. A couple things. So you want to again check where you're going. Check if there's any fire restrictions in place. So out here right now on the White River National Forest, for instance, you can have a campfire if you're in a developed campground and you build it in that metal ring
Mhm.
that's designed for fire. But if you're just what we call dispersed camping, which means you've pulled off the road and you're camping on your own, and so that would be a rock, fire ring, or you're backpacking, and so you're thinking about a rock fire ring. Right now, we're in fire restrictions where you can't have that kind of campfire because just because of the risk. We have been getting some rain, but just long term, it's still dry, and so the risk from those fires are much higher than something in a developed campground where the site's been hardened and cleared, and you're in that designated metal ring for the
So
fire. So,
is it safer
oh,
for people to bring a stove? Should they just bring a camping stove rather than assume that they're going to go gather logs and rocks?
sure, yeah. So, in most fire restrictions, something that's petroleum fueled, so a propane stove, backpacking stove, those sorts of things are okay. And right now you can find kind of propane fires that campfires really that are portable that you can take with you, and those are going to be okay because the difference with those is those have a switch so you can turn them off.
Right.
So yeah, so those are okay. But again, it's out ahead of time what the restrictions are. So for instance, charcoal's not okay right now under the fire restrictions.
Because it's not just the fire; it's the embers as well, and the ashes that'll float.
Right, and so if you knock over your stove, you can still turn it off. But you knock over the charcoal, you can't. And then what do you do after you've cooked your burgers and you're ready to go? People, dump the ashes, and so those sorts of things are definitely a problem. So we've seen a number of just illegal campfires. So someone not following the fire restrictions, that's one thing. And then the other thing that we've seen a lot of is abandoned campfires. So you got to go back to Smokey Bear, and put out those campfires. But when you leave your campfire, you want it to be cold to the touch. So you've used water, you stirred that water in, and you can put your hand on it and you're not feeling heat. And if you can feel heat, that means it can get going again. And sometimes people really underestimate that. But when we're out with natural fires that have been started by lightning, for instance, we can have a lightning storm move through, and it can be 3 or 4 days later where we'll get a fire that heats up from a lightning strike days ago. Just the conditions just weren't right. So it's just sitting there waiting, kind of smoldering, and then you get a hot, dry day with some wind, and then it gets going.
Right.
And we call those holdovers. But so the same thing can happen with a campfire that you haven't extinguished. And we have had some fires out here. Luckily, they haven't been huge, but this year we have had escaped campfires that we've had to put a number of firefighters on to keep it in check. So that's something to just keep in mind too. It may look like it's out, but make sure it's out.
Well, and I think one of the big things that I want people to realize, again, respecting nature, but that there's responsibility with being in nature. There's the concept of leave no trace. A lot of people used to go into Disney theme parks, and there's a whole crowd of people that clean up after you. That's not happening when you go to the forest, and we really need to respect that it's home to the animals, that it's all of, and if you're able to take advantage of it, that you also have to respect it and have a responsibility to care for it while you're
No,
there.
right, and that's an excellent point. And that's another thing that we see it every year, but we're seeing it a lot this year too, where people aren't packing all their trash out. And, so that's just, say pack it in and pack it out, for sure.
It's a little icky, but you got to deal with it.
Right, right.
All right, so while we're talking about this, if there's no outhouse around, what are the rules that people need to know for those personal moments when you just got to go?
Right. So, and again, this is going to depend a little bit on where you are. Some areas, like when you're rafting in a canyon or something like that, there might be some different rules than just being out on the forest. If you're camping, and there's a lot of different self-contained type units you can buy from an outdoor retailer that breaks waste down, and you can actually throw it away when you get home, in a bag. That kind of thing is preferable, because if you think about some of these sites, these dispersed sites that aren't part of a developed campground, there's people in them every weekend. And so you think about if people are going off to the to the bush behind camp by August, that's getting to be not a very pleasant place. If you don't have something like that,
But they should be. So they can bring their potty with them. There are porta potties.
Yep.
You can bring for your camp.
Yep. And even backpacking. And in some places that, it just depends on where you are, those are required. So that's something you want to be checking out in advance. Otherwise, the other option is digging what we call a cat hole. So that's, you want to be away from water, at least 200 steps, and then, 6 to 8 inches down, and then bury it. And then ideally you're packing out your TP.
Any paper. And if you just got to pee, do you got to be 200 steps away too?
Well,
hiking?
Yeah, I mean, it's better if you're not right by the water when you're out hiking. Just if you think about a place where you're seeing a lot of use, that could build up over time. And in other places, when you're rafting, the Grand Canyon or something, they may recommend to actually go in the water or whatever. That's just the kind of thing you need to check out in advance. The whole idea is, we're trying to leave as little impact as we can, and so it's going to vary a little bit based on where you are. So do some research in advance.
And trace. Again, it's a little disgusting, but bring that paper back out with you. All right, let's talk animals.
Sure.
That's, again, we hear these crazy stories. Or there's something in the news the other day about a woman getting chased by a moose because she thought, oh, this is cute. I'll go take a picture with a moose, or I'll go take a picture with that cute little bear. No. What really happens to those people?
Yeah, I mean, and it seems to be this growing trend of the selfie with the dangerous wildlife, and those sorts of things. So, you really have to respect wildlife out here. I've worked in a lot of different places where there's potentially dangerous wildlife, and you just have to respect it, and you have to understand it, and you're not likely to have problems. So, we could start with bears, for instance. Out here.
So you run into a bear. Let's go through it. You run into a bear. We were hiking one time. This is the funniest thing. My husband and I were hiking down, and we'd run into a ranger, and she'd said, get your cameras ready. There's a bear down there. There's been a bear sighting. Awesome. So we're coming down. I really don't care to run into a bear, but nonetheless, we come around this corner, and there's a mama bear and 2 baby bears, probably 50 yards up the path. A cliff going up on one side, a river on the other side. And my husband decides what does he do? He takes off his backpack to get his camera out. I stood behind him. So I say that you don't have to outrun the bear, you just have to outrun whoever's with you.
Right.
So we ended up scaring the bear off with the noise as we banked some metal together. We were trying to shout to get rid of them. So what's the bear strategy?
Yeah. So, and so we're talking, black bears here. So if you're going to be in a place where there's grizzly bears, so, Yellowstone, Glacier, Alaska, again, look at what the advice is there, because everything we talk about with black bears will apply, but it gets a little more complicated with grizzlies. But so with black bears out here, your average black bear that's in the woods wants nothing to do with you. And as soon as it kind of knows what you are, so kind of waving your arms and talking to it, usually that's enough for them to be like, yeah, I think I'll get out of here, you know.
And black bears they're across the country. They're in the East as well, I believe.
Yeah. And black bears come in all different colors, you know, but it's all the same species black bear. And so if you're in an area where there's grizzly bears, I mean, you'll know it in
right.
people,
different rules,
signs and, that kind of thing. But yeah, so, but where black bears get really dangerous is when they've gotten food from people and they're no longer afraid of people. So that's a really bad combination. So going back to camping, you want to make sure that you've secured your food when you're not using it. So even during the day, in a lot of places we have food lockers now where you can lock your food up, but keep it in your vehicle, keep it in the food locker. We've had a bear up by Aspen that comes into the campground right at lunch. Everyone's out hiking and is away from the campground, and so it's coming in the middle of the day just looking for food. Once they figure out that campsites and people are a source of food, they're going to check it out every time they see it, because that's kind of how a bear makes its living, right? It's out about half the year, and then it's going to hibernate during much of the year, so it needs to get as many calories as it can. So that's the main thing on the.
Are there Twitter feeds running around? So rule of thumb: if you see the bear while you're on a trail, for the most part, make noise and it should stay away. If they've got baby bears with them, then they're a little bit more protective, so you work even harder to stay away. Are there Twitter feeds around or anything that says like there's been a bear or mountain lion or whatever in an area, so that they know that a bear has been more aggressive? Like if I'm going to go camping someplace, is there anybody that's like Facebook groups in different places where there are people?
I'm not sure that there might be. So if we're in an area where we've had, if we have a problem, and we're talking just the fact that a bear's shown up, not, we're gonna.
But that they're harassing. Like
I mean, we're gonna.
In the woods, that's fine. But I mean that if there are bears that now have been trained that I can go have lunch over at the Maroon Bells, then that's a problem.
Right, and we work closely with the state, so Parks and Wildlife. If we're having a problem bear, we'll work with them, and they may catch it and remove it. But we'll post things, at a campground if there's been bear sightings, and just reminding people even more to be careful with their food. And then, if you're backpacking, there's a lot of different options you can get, but you can get what's called a bear resistant food container. So, and you want to store that away from your tent and away from where you cook, and you want to cook away from your tent as well, just so you're not attracting bears to your tent, but a bear resistant food container, they can smell the food, but they just can't get to it, so they give up.
Yeah.
And so that sort of over time that teaches them that, like, yeah, this isn't worth my time to check this out.
Are there any other big animals that people have to worry about?
Yeah, well, you mentioned moose, so that's one. You think about moose, they're not like a deer that runs away right away at danger. A moose, it survives by kind of being big and a little bit mean, and they'll defend. Yeah, and they'll think about one of their big enemies in nature. One of their big predators are wolves, and to a moose, a dog and a wolf are the same thing. And so a lot of the incidents where moose have hurt people, it's been a loose dog, someone that's walking their dog off leash. The moose gets upset about, maybe it's defending its young or whatever, but it's ready to go, stomp that wolf into the mud, and the dog comes running back to you, and you got this worked up moose, and then people have gotten hurt that way. So keeping your distance, everybody loves moose, but you don't have to be right next to them to take a picture, for sure. And then keeping your dogs restrained, on a leash. And if you have your dog with you and you're seeing the moose, I would just keep moving, and because dogs really concern them. So keep your distance and keep your dogs leashed.
Now, the funny thing is, I think moose don't have very good eyesight. So they tell you to hide behind a bush.
Well, one thing we'll talk about real fast with going back to bears. So a big rule with bears is just don't run away from a bear because it can catch you. And you think about what does bear food do? I mean, it runs from a bear, right? I mean, if it's an animal.
Right.
And same with mountain lions, right? I mean, so you never want to run from an animal like that because that can trigger you're acting like prey basically
Right.
in that trigger. You think about running from your dog, it chases you,
Right.
So a moose, run. If it's coming at you, and its ears are back and it's mad, then you can run and then get something between you and the moose. And I think they have, I think it's you're just trying to protect yourself, but they'll, I think they see fine and hear fine and everything, but just you're trying to remove yourself from whatever they're concerned about, and getting something between you and them to protect yourself. So people have climbed trees and, that kind of thing. Again, it's like all this stuff, the more you can avoid that problem in the first place, so keep your dog leashed and don't get too close to them. And, and people see moose every day and are fine. It's just those situations where people get too close. And particularly concerning is a cow with a calf. She's going to be very protective of it. And then especially in the autumn, the males can be somewhat territorial too. So just, they're really big and give them some space.
I laughed. I think we were hiking someplace and there was a sign. Where I got this from about hiding behind a bush was from a sign out in Colorado. And it said to go behind a bush. I'm thinking this giant animal, suddenly I'm behind a little bush and it won't be able to, it'll smell me still, won't it? But
right.
That's what some sign was saying.
Yeah. Yeah. So just, yeah. But, mainly you're sort of like, you're getting out of the way and you're not being a threat to them.
Yeah. Okay.
That's, yeah.
So how about smaller animals? Skunks, foxes, raccoons. I was walking my dog recently and there was a raccoon during the day. I got pretty freaked out because raccoons shouldn't be seeing them during the day, but someone said no, when it's baby season that they might be out foraging for food. So besides stay away from all animals, what else do people need to know about?
Yeah, you want to, so yeah, definitely keep your distance and don't be feeding, animals like that, because that, again, they start losing their fear of people and you can get bites and things like that. But really,
and can I just say, none of them, not even the cute little ducks and not even the cute little marmots and chipmunks, like don't feed any of them, right?
Right. Yeah, for a lot of reasons.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and often we're not feeding them things that are healthy for them, but just
Doritos is not part of chipmunk food.
Right. And but so one concern with the smaller animals, but any mammals really, but the smaller animals is rabies. And so if you see an animal that's acting weird,
mm-hmm.
That usually means, maybe something's not quite right. So a lot of these, something's out during the day, it's not afraid, that's a really good indication that's like, yeah, I'm going to keep my distance from that.
So do you just walk speedily away from them? What do you do if they're not being normal? Do you just,
I would,
you don't want to run, but
yeah, right. I mean, I would just keep my distance from them.
Will they respond to noise?
I mean, it just depends on the situation a little bit, but yeah, you can make noise, make sure that you're there, or that they know you're there.
Are small animals intimidated by people because we're bigger?
Yeah, I mean, they can be. Again, a problem if you have one that's not being intimidated or just acting weird, or another example is a bat. Say a bat doesn't want to be on the ground. So if you're seeing a bat on the ground, it's probably got something wrong with it, right? And so you don't want to pick it up. But that's how a number of people have run into problems, is they pick up the bat,
What?
Right, but that really shows like, okay, that's an animal that's not acting the way it should be. A bat shouldn't be out during the day on the ground. So something's not right there. So keep your distance. And then, the other thing you can get with rodents, or the fleas can carry plague. So you don't want to. Sounds like common sense, but you don't want to be messing with dead rodents and that kind of thing, but also you're another reason to keep your pets leashed, because you don't know what they're going to bring back to you. Uh, it's the fleas that carry that. And then, rabbits have several different things that you can pick up from wild rabbits. And again, so you wouldn't want to, rabbits acting weird, you wouldn't want to go pick it up to see if you could help it. Or again, a dead rabbit, you don't want to mess with it. Sounds like common sense, but we see that every year. Someone contracting something by or potentially by handling it. And so just leave it alone. You can if something's really concerning, you can call your local wildlife officer. You can report something to the Department of Health that are tracking those sorts of things, but just be kind of careful around those and use some common sense. If it's acting weird, keep your distance.
So should you have like pepper spray with you? Can you use that as a last gasp self-defense if you've come upon a coyote or a rabid fox or something that's acting weird?
Yeah, I mean, so the pepper spray is more for bears. So if you're in a situation where that's probably going to be where it's most effective. And if you have something like that, I would just make sure that you've maybe buy 2 cans of it and use the first one and practice a little bit, because it's like anything. If you've never used it, you don't want the first time you use it to be when you're having a problem, So that stuff is kind of powdery. If you shoot it in the wind, it can come back in your face, and it's things like that you're aware of. I think the main thing is just using your head in common sense.
Okay.
around it. Yeah, so out here on the White River National Forest, we don't really have snakes that are of venomous snakes or that are really of concern, but a lot of parts of America we do. And I worked in Arizona for a long time, and lots of snakes down there.
I had a friend in California, just their local park, they had signs up about rattlesnakes. Literally, this was outside LA.
Yeah, right. So, and so the main thing with them is to, you never want to step or put your hand where you can't see what's there, because when they strike, it's going to be defensive, because they're thinking you're out to hurt them. So that's a pretty good rule. Wear closed-toed, wear boots or shoes anyway, because some people that have gotten bit in the toe or different things when they step right by a snake, so you can protect your feet that way. And really, and this goes back to the common sense thing, but the biggest thing is to leave them alone. The number of in Arizona, the majority of bites would be males between like 14 and 40, and they often would be bit in the hand and in the arm, and they would always have some story about how that happened, but they grabbed it, and so just leave it alone. Don't try to catch it. Don't try to kill it. Just leave it alone. And you're going to avoid most of your problems that way. Watch where you're stepping. Watch where you're putting your hands. If you see one, keep your distance, take some pictures, and leave it alone.
Keep your distance take pictures with a photo lens.
Right.
All right, let's talk some water sports. Kayaking, paddleboarding, fishing, because a lot of people have, paddleboarding is very popular. People have taken up fishing. What are things to be aware with that? One thing I'm thinking of is footwear, like don't use flip-flops. Always have something secure on your foot.
Yeah, like for if you're fishing in a river, then, waders, something like that. You want to, if you're using chest waders, you want to make sure you have a belt so that if you did fall, that those waders don't fill up with water. And respect the current. It's pretty impressive how just knee-deep river it can be hard to negotiate with slippery rocks. So be careful. I think a lot of the accidents that might happen with fishing are revolve around boats. So do some research on boat safety. Watch the weather. If you're on a lake, be heading in before those winds and storms come in. If you're caught out there, get to shore as quickly as you can, even if it's the opposite shore till the storm goes. And of course, life jackets are required that you have it varies on where you are, but say in Colorado, you have to have a life jacket for everybody that's on the boat.
Well, and I always say to
People
people,
over
go ahead.
12 don't have to have them on. If you're 12 or under, you have to have them on. But I always have them on because if you have an accident, you may not, if you swamped your canoe or whatever, you may not have time to grab your life jacket as soon as you want. So I just keep it on, I think that's a safe
with
thing.
power boats. There was a horrible accident years ago. There were some members, I think, of the New York Mets that were at a party on a lake, and they crashed their boat, and some of them died. They ran into the dock. Because you can drive a car doesn't mean you can drive a boat, and that there's a lot of maneuvering and the power of the, as you said, the current or a little bit of chop, that you don't realize how that can shift a boat, can make a boat lurch. So if there's a person around, that you end up, don't go close to a boat. So, you're wading out into the water and the boat lurches, that you really need to take your time and take some lessons on how to
Right.
drive a boat or how
Yeah,
to.
that's what I was going to recommend for a lot of this stuff. There's just about wherever you are, there's outfitters that'll, you can either rent from them and they'll show you, or they'll even take you out. So, and for rafting out here, that's a big thing. There's a ton of commercial raft outfitters, to go with something like that. And then when we're talking motorboats, which is a whole different thing, kind of the same rules apply as driving, though, as you mentioned. So alcohol can be a big factor too, and those sorts of things. So you don't want you can't drive a boat under the influence either. So you just need to be cognizant of that as well. So.
One big thing you mentioned, kayaking and current. Around here in the East, where there are these big bays, but they're tidal, that people need to also keep in mind coming back. Like, it doesn't feel so bad, depending on how the current is. If might have been easy going out, but you have to come back. It's kind of like hiking downhill isn't so easy. Coming back when you're kayaking or paddleboarding may or may not be so easy either. So you have to, check your energy for the way back.
Oh yeah, no, that's a really good point. Know what the tides are doing. So again, know before you head out there, and in out here, on the river stretches, make sure you know what class rapids you have, and are you prepared for that? And yeah, so again, it seems really common sense, but sometimes it's so hard. I mean, we're always so busy, and then just trying to get all your stuff together. Sometimes it's hard to take a few minutes to do a little bit of research, but really taking the time to know before you head out somewhere, know before you go is really important.
That's the whole point of this, because again, people think, oh, I'll just go into nature, it'll be easy. No, you really are things you have to know about. Let's talk now about kind of what goes into that gear and how important the gear is. You talked a little bit with hiking about always take a raincoat, because you never know when the weather's going to change, or take assorted layers. I'll call it a raincoat, a windbreaker, another sweatshirt, a fleece, something, so that you've got your layers or a lighter layer. Water, critical.
Right, and of course that's going to depend. The more water you have, really, the better. But a couple quarts out here is pretty normal. If you're in Arizona, you're going to want, when it's warmer, you're going to need more than that, and even a sports drink for every 3 quarts of water, and when it's really hot, that kind of thing. But yeah, so plan ahead. You're gonna need more water than you think, and you're gonna be glad you have it. So you want to take that, and then dress in layers, and then have extra layers. And I always think about where I'm going, and I'm like, what's the worst? How cold? What's the worst weather that it can be? And then I take one more thing that I think I'm going to need, and I often end up using that. And so, and out here in Colorado, July, I have a hat, a warm hat and gloves in my backpack. Just especially get up above timberline, and you're going to really wish you had something like that. So
not only that, rainstorm comes in, the temperature can drop 10 or 15 degrees, and when you're wet, if you're wet, then suddenly you get chilled in a different way. So you really do need to keep yourself warm. Right.
You keep yourself warm, and then dry is a big thing. So have rain gear with you always, and then you can.
And it's not that heavy; it doesn't take up a lot of space.
Right, but you'll be glad you have it, and then that helps with if you're getting a cold wind too. That rain gear can help with that. I always. I'm sorry.
Let's talk footwear.
Sure. So, I think you're going to be happier, the better footwear that you have. So, a leather boot is great, or at least a lightweight hiking boot that goes above the ankles. Out here, it's rocky. I have a 14-year-old, and he just wants to wear his tennis shoes everywhere, and trying to show him on these rocky trails how better protected his foot is in a good boot, and then just how much better traction you have and that kind of thing.
And your feet don't get tired. You think that your sneakers are comfortable, but when you're hiking, it just somehow having that solid sole of the boot keeps your foot more rested than the sneaker. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, and you just have a lot more support, and so that really helps. And then I like to, you kind of find your own preference. I like to use a really thin sock liner that you can buy at an outdoor store, and then a hiking sock on top of that, and that really helps with prevent blisters and that kind of thing. You want to, if you get a new pair of boots, even if it's not a super heavy pair of boots, you go ahead and wear them around the house for a while. We'll wear them to the grocery store. Just get them broken in before you go on a big hike, because that'll, about a mile and a half in, you'll be wishing you'd done that, and certainly by the end of the day.
But it always amazes me on some of the hikes I've been on, again, especially the popular ones. People, not only are they in tennis sneakers, they might be in cute little fashion sneakers or in flip-flops. Or I was hiking the other day. We were hiking in a ski area, but so there was a place where you could take the chair up and then hike down, but they were coming down this really steep. We got up it, and it was super steep. And I'm watching a woman come down, and she's got Merrill slides on, and she was going to be in big trouble when she got to some of those steep parts. You need to have, they might be fine for walking around wherever, shopping and going to lunch, but proper shoes that tie on your foot and attach to your foot. And as you said, the water sports, no flip-flops, like proper water shoes so that you've got a grip.
Right. Yeah. Because that'll make a big difference in stability and in traction and just protecting your feet. And, in the Southwest, in places, I'd always say there's a lot of reasons why you want to not be in a pair of sandals. I mean, you got cactus and thorn bushes and all kinds of other stuff that can get you, snakes and and everything, and you just really want to protect your foot, even though it's warm and it's comfortable to wear that. Just be really thinking about it. If you have problems with your feet in your back a few miles, it's pretty miserable getting back.
It's really bad. And you mentioned blisters. I always make sure that we have Band-Aids and some moleskin just in case, multiple pairs of socks.
Yeah, right. I like, yeah, right. The hiking socks that you can get in an outdoor store. Yeah, I always have an extra pair in my backpack just in case I end up, getting wet or something like that. That can help. And then if you're backpacking, you do want to be changing your socks every day. That can help with all that. But yeah, you want to go ahead and put some moleskin on as you're starting to feel a hot spot. Don't wait for it to get really bad. And then sometimes you just know, like, back of my heel, I'm probably going to get a blister. So, do a little preparation ahead of time and get the moleskin on it before you start hiking,
Now, how about everybody likes their technology. They like their toys. So any we talked a little bit about low tech, like make sure you bring a whistle with you, hiking guides, look at all trails, any other kinds of toys. I know we have a satellite little GPS thing, so that if you're backcountry where you're going someplace where people may not, your cell service, again, you can't assume cell service is going to be working, so that that bounce off a satellite and let people know where you are.
Right. Yeah. So, there's all kinds of things like that are great. It's still, one thing we didn't talk about is, having just a good old fashioned paper map and kind of knowing how to read it and where you are on it is going to be, that's pretty foolproof, because all this technology is great. And there's like the satellite trackers for when you're way back there. You can signal if you're having trouble, or you can check in every night, but all that, as we all know, that technology can fail. Having I love having a GPS with a map on it, and that'll work in the backcountry, and I can map my route, and I know how many miles I've gone, and my kids love seeing all that, but your batteries can die. I was with someone once that he was never looking up. He was always looking at his GPS, and he dropped it on a
Oh,
rock and it broke, and he really didn't know which way the car was,
wow.
because he had never looked up. That's kind of an extreme case, but all that technology can fail. So you want to make sure you have backups. And even some of those, I think those are great if you're doing something that's a little more, remote and out there to have that kind of satellite stuff. But if you're supposed to be checking in every night, a number of times it'll just be some technological reason why someone didn't send the signal. But then what is the person
Yeah.
that's waiting for the signal do? Like, okay, I haven't heard from them, so are they okay or not? And so it's all that that's great. And the electronic maps and all that, those are awesome. A lot of them you can have them on your computer at home and then print them off so you have the paper copy. It's really been great, all the different technology we have. And you can go to the Colorado Parks and Wildlife webpage, and they have some great maps there at CPW.
And as you said, also just let people know, anyone that you left home, let them know where you're going. And this is, again, if you're fishing, kayaking, whatever it is, there's a bracelet for, again, people that like to go out on their own. We use this for cycling. My husband uses this all the time. An ID bracelet's called Road ID. And it's just you get a little metal, it's like a little ID, and then a sports band or a rubber band kind of bracelet. And it puts your name, a phone number, contact number, you can put whatever you want on it. It's super cheap. But if, God forbid, something happens, it could be fishing, it could be kayaking, paddleboarding, whatever it is, or you get kind of lost or disoriented and somebody finds you, this hat will have, and for some reason, if you're unconscious, this will have all the information and contact information with you so that people can contact you. And that's Road ID. If you Google it, roadid.com, it's super easy.
Right. And even for when you're just, like you say, your husband, for biking or running, a lot of times, you don't take your wallet with you when you do that. So if you do get hurt and you can't tell them who you are, that they'll at least know who you are. You know?
It's really good for runners. I know I have a cousin that uses it when he rides his motorcycle because crazy stuff happens.
Right.
All right, one last question, and then I'll let you go. And again, if anybody has any questions about their planning their trips, post them up there before I let Dave go. Anything people need to know? You talked a little bit about dogs and watching out for wildlife. Are dogs allowed everywhere? Do people need to, again, check a website before they bring a dog places?
Yeah, definitely check it out. So, in most national forests, there's not going to be a problem if you're out west on BLM land. It's going to be fine. So there's more restrictions in national parks. So if you're planning on going to national parks, for sure, check that out if you're going to be bringing your dog. But especially in really popular areas, there may be some particular rules that you want to, again, know before you go. But, probably the biggest thing in most areas is I have a dog. My dog loves to run around, not be on a leash, but when you're in there's just so many things for your protection, for the dog's protection, for wildlife's protection. Just, keep them on a leash.
And in some of these places, the national parks, I think in particular, you need passes. So you can't just drive in. That be prepared that there is a cost to be able to get in. And are the parks limiting admittance to it? I know state parks, a lot of them are. Here are state parks down at the beaches, they're limiting it like crazy.
Yeah, I think you need to just, again, really, really do the research ahead of time, because some definitely they have plans, this year, given concerns with social distancing and thing. We have a couple areas out here on the White River National Forest that are really popular, Maroon Bells and Hanging Lake, and both those need reservations in advance because we are limiting. These are places that would just be jam-packed, without that. And so especially this year, in order to allow people to visit them safely, we need to reduce the numbers. So yeah, just really check that out. And then a lot of times, you do need passes for particularly national parks, but some areas on the forest, some areas on BLM. Do the research. And a lot of times you can buy an annual pass that'll cover all that. In America, the Beautiful Pass.
Yep.
So,
and it's great to support. Yeah. It's not that expensive to buy a national park pass, and it's great to support it. And it's great to have this beautiful, resources for us.
Yeah.
Before us.
And then it's super. And when you have it, it's super convenient because you can go ahead and you don't have to worry about the fees, because you already have the annual pass. So.
Yeah, it's true. All right, Dave Boyd, thank you so very much. Everybody out there, have fun. It's so great that you're taking advantage of nature and all that it has to offer. Just be sure that you plan ahead. Be sure that you're safe. It seems easy, it seems accessible, but a little bit of planning can go a very long way in making sure that you have a great, fun time with no major emergencies to go with it. All right, don't forget, share these videos. Let people know that we're doing these Facebook Lives. Check out our YouTube channel. Let people know how people follow us on Facebook so that they can see these and we'll promote them. And all stay safe and have a great day. Thanks, Dave.
Okay, thank you.